Recently, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders came together to propose a specific Green New Deal proposal that is focused on public housing.
It's called the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act, and according to some data presented by Data for Progress, it would decarbonize immediate environments and upgrade 1 million units of public housing, among other things. Joining us via Skype to talk about the proposal is Aldana Cohen, a senior fellow at Data for Progress, who conducted this study. He's also an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me on. Big fan of Rising.
Absolutely. Okay, so you've been talking a lot about this Green New Deal for Public Housing Act. You actually dug into some of it. Just outline what exactly it is. I mean, it sounds like quite an ambitious plan.
That's right. It is an ambitious plan. And I think we have to start by recognizing that public housing in the United States has suffered decades of neglect and underfunding. So looking out to 2030, there's something like an $89 billion shortfall in repair needs. And what this bill proposes is to say, okay, we have this problem. This housing has been neglected. We need to make repairs. Why not make these green repairs? Why not create hundreds of thousands of jobs developing the green building technology all across the country? And at the very same time as we make these apartments habitable and decent for their residents, we'll totally decarbonize the housing stock. We'll make it healthy and safe, and we'll basically help teach the whole rest of the country how to have climate-friendly housing that is good to live in and it's good for the planet.
Here's the thing that to me is so interesting about this plan. When the Green New Deal proposal was put forward and sort of articulated to the public, it was explicitly made clear this wasn't just about the environment. This was actually about transforming our economy, transforming society. And to me, this is one of the first proposals that makes that really specific and really clear.
I think that's right. You know, the Green New Deal, I think, had three big ideas that people picked up on. The first was very rapid decarbonization, and we all know what that means, or have some sense. The second is green jobs, which are easy to understand. But the third idea was, let's tackle inequalities of race and class at the same time as we decarbonize and cut out carbon pollution. And I think most people didn't really know what it meant to do all that at the same time, and they said it's too much. But once you follow the carbon off of the graph and into the actual physical reality of the world, then you find out that, yes, if you're going to have a lot of carbon coming out of homes, you retrofit those homes, you put people to work, you develop new skills and new technologies, and you improve the living conditions of people throughout those communities, then that's exactly how you tackle climate change and inequality at once. And in fact, it doesn't really make sense to do them separately.
Yeah, so that's the thing, though, is whenever we talk about this, and that's kind of my biggest issue here, is that, I mean, ultimately, decarbonization, it seems here that the only way to truly decarbonize is you're going to have to hit GDP and output. Now, look, I mean, this is a massive infrastructure, investment project, something I'm totally behind. If you're going to retrofit homes, then you might as well do it from a green perspective. But, I mean, is it a little bit disingenuous to say that, building these millions of homes, I think you point out it would be like building the country's fourth largest, more popular than Houston, number of homes that we're talking about here, that is actually what's going to decarbonize the United States? I just don't see that. I mean, as a public housing thing, I totally get it. But, in terms of selling it as decarbonization, I don't think that's right.
I appreciate that. And here's the thing. This is really for all Americans. We should make that clear.
Sure.
This would create more jobs in red states than blue states by almost 20,000, or in that range. The thing is that if you were going to repair a building right now, you're going to use 21st century building technology. What that means is you are going to put in the most efficient appliances. That's electric induction stoves that the world's best chefs in London love to use. That's heat pumps that will allow you to cool air and heat air through the same HVAC system, will allow you to dehumidify humid buildings during the summer. You're going to use far superior insulation. So I don't think a trade-off between growth and environment is really relevant here. What we're trying to do is create a more efficient, comfortable, safe, healthy, and simply modern housing stock. Mm-hmm. And I'll just quickly note, people don't know this, but NYCHA, which is New York's housing authority, along with NYPA, which is a New York public utility in the 1990s, combined, they made a contest who could build the first energy-efficient apartment-sized fridge. Maytag won the contest. The fridges, tens and tens of thousands, were all manufactured in Iowa. The fridges that were replaced were recycled in upstate New York. And ultimately, all Americans suddenly had access to Energy Star apartment-size fridges. And the fridges ended up for public housing authorities were free because the savings paid back the cost within a few years. So
Right.
I think sometimes we get stuck in abstractions where if you just get down to nuts and bolts, it actually just makes a ton of sense to move very quickly to make these homes healthier, safer, more efficient. And that is, in the 21st century, going to mean no carbon.
Well, and here's the other thing that I've heard a lot is, first people said, oh, well, the whole country is going to revolt against this green dream or whatever, right? It's going to be so unpopular, it's going to kill Democrats at the polls. Well, actually, they did the polling and it's actually quite popular. So then what I heard was, well, when you get down to the specific details, that's when the revolt is going to happen. So on this particular proposal, which has very specific details, how popular is it?
Thanks. That's a great question. The policy is extremely popular. We have well over 10 percentage point separation between support for the Green New Deal for public housing versus opposition. And that's even when we expose respondents to partisan messaging. So, Democrats think this is a great idea. We'll lift people out of poverty and improve their living conditions. And then Republicans will say, oh, this is a gigantic waste of money and totally inefficient. And even when we expose people to that messaging, it polls around 10% points, positive support versus opposition. When you break it down into details, it just gets more popular. When you ask, what do you think about strong apprenticeship programs to move public housing residents and low-income workers into really high-paying, union rate, generally union jobs? Huge support. What do you feel about really improving the health conditions, getting rid of molds, getting rid of lead? Huge public support. So yeah, I think, again, to your point, Sagar, when you pose it as a set of abstractions, do we want to have this giant program to decarbonize? It gets a bit abstract and you have these philosophical debates. Once you tell people what you're actually proposing to do, they love it.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great proposal. I'm more just talking about if this is all it really was, then I think then I think it would be fine. But ultimately, it is paired with this promise to cut carbon to zero, and I just don't think there's any way to do that without ultimately hitting GDP output. If these are the sub parts of the plan, it would be overwhelmingly popular. That's my main criticism of the Green New Deal.
Well, I think that we have to remember, if this was the 1930s and there was a congestion problem in New York City, what you wouldn't do is build extra lanes for horse-drawn carriages.
Right.
And in the 1990s, if homes were getting cold, what you wouldn't do is install a coal-burning stove. And now it's the 21st century. And the best, most efficient ways to keep a home comfortable and safe are electrical systems. And when you have 100% electric homes, then all you have to do to decarbonize them, power them entirely with renewable energy, hydro, wind, solar, and so on. And that's very easy to do. And in fact, in Manhattan, New York, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and all over Europe, the affordable housing builders are all now switching over to green technologies because they're simply the most cost effective. So I think we got to think about how exciting it is that we have this opportunity with public housing as a public asset to leverage that asset through procurement, through skill development, through economic development, to really transform the skills and capabilities of American workers and American companies. And we can actually have that zero carbon world. And the thing is that every problem that we tackle, we're going to break up into little pieces. So I love starting the Green New Deal with public housing because it is so specific and it tells a story, just as I think you were both recognizing, that anyone can understand. And I've co-authored a book called A Planet to Win, Why We Need a Green New Deal. And we talk quite a bit about the housing crisis there and how badly it's hurting Americans. And I think it's really, really strong messaging to go out and say, listen, we can improve your life at home. We can make that healthy, safe, affordable. We're going to decarbonize at the same time. And I think as we go through the different sectors of the economy, people are just going to get more and more excited about this framework.
This is a very politically smart move. I will say that.
It absolutely is. Very interesting stuff. Thank you so much for digging into the details with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
I will have more Rising after this.